So it's been floating around in the SEO community like quite a bit, especially on like SEO Twitter, about Python and SEO and how it's like kind of the new thing to want to learn. And I have a lot of people in the technical SEO community asking me about like if I know Python and how we're using Python and stuff like that. But every time that I bring it up to you, you kind of push me in a different direction. I mean, so before we get into that, help me understand, like, why would I want to learn Python to help me with SEO?
Well, Python is like any, there's two types of programming languages that we'll want to talk about here. One is our scripting languages, and that's like Python or Ruby, languages like that, where you can write complex scripts that loop through large data sets and process them. So they're scripting languages.
So how would that apply to SEO? Like if I was doing like a technical audit, keyword research?
Well, let's talk about the two types. So there's two types of languages. There's scripting languages like Python or Ruby, or C, or your classic programming languages, right? And then there's query languages like SQL, which are mainly built for working with data, for counting things, for doing kind of like analytics type of stuff. So your scripting languages are more for processing data. So if you want to go through a list of keywords and tag them with an intent bucket, right? Say this is, or like stage of the funnel. You do that using a scripting language like Python. But most of the things, pretty much everything that you can do in Python in that sense, right? Like keyword tagging, any type of like data processing type of stuff, or calculating specific metrics, you can do also in a spreadsheet. So that's basically what a spreadsheet is doing for you, is it brings the logic of a scripting language like Python to the surface with a user interface that's easy to use.
Interesting.
So one example, like the simple, like an if statement, right? You can use an if statement in a sheet just as easily, obviously more easily than you can do an if statement in Python. You can also do the same thing in SQL. So there's like, it's important to know that Python is a great and well-known scripting language that's very useful, but there's an infinite number of ways to skin this cat. If you want to do something like keyword tagging, keyword intent tagging, right? You can do it in a spreadsheet, you can do it in any scripting language, you can do it even in SQL. So it's not like Python is in any way unique in that capability.
So because I have been seeing a lot of people like kind of, I don't know if they're pushing, like I sent you a link today, I don't know if I sent it to you today, or I saw somebody tweet it today, they said, talking about why they should replace Excel with Python, right? It wasn't necessarily for SEO, but an SEO person tweeted it out, and like I think, like why, in what, would it just be because the data sets are so massive that like Excel can't handle it?
Yeah, so, the cases where, like we hire Python developers. We have 2 Python developers on our team right now. We're full-time developers. They do things that you otherwise cannot do in a spreadsheet. If you want to build big systems that you're going to use, if you want to build software products, right, that you're going to use over and over again, and you're going to deal with data sets that are just beyond the scale of what a spreadsheet can handle. If you're working on a site that has over 1 million pages, an enterprise site, Sheets isn't going to work for a lot of things that you want to do. But generally, teams that are working on enterprise sites have dedicated developers to do stuff like this. Right? They're not, I don't know. People have different ways of getting at this, but generally, like, that need is kind of filled, I think, on teams of that size.
But isn't there a disconnect between like the Python devs that we have that are working on our software app? They don't know SEO though, right? I mean, like, so is there a viability for like an SEO person, like the need for SEO data analysis, the need for like that type of stuff?
100%. So say you're working at an agency, you get a new client, and that client has a huge site. It's the first site. You're working with a 10 million page site for the first time, and you're just like, okay, what do we do with this? In that case, it's super helpful to have someone on the team who knows enough Python to at least start getting your hands dirty with data sets.
And like, what would they be doing? They would be like full site crawls or what? Like,
so if you crawl a site in Screaming Frog or in Deep Crawl, right, and you have a million row CSV, 10 million row CSV that you're outputting from that tool, pretty much Python is like the best way to do some and like the terminal in general. It's not just Python, but like knowing how to use the terminal on your machine.
Meaning what?
And basically running command line.
Okay, gotcha.
So like command line data processing in general, I would include Python in that, some like light Python scripting. There's a bunch of different, like sed and awk and all these little like, like command line packages. There's CSV to SQL. There's this whole universe of data hacker command line stuff that it's really helpful to have someone on your team who can do them. So like on our team, right, we don't get into this situation too much because we have ways of, we've been at it for a while and we have ways of dealing with data of larger size in BigQuery. But there always comes a time it's like there's something you haven't seen before. And just the more, it's like having a horse in the 1800s. You know what I mean? Like you just have more range of capability and flexibility, and you have less oh shit moments.
Right.
Because you're like, oh, we know, Jane over there, like she's good on the command line. She can write little scripts and she'll figure it out.
Right. So, okay. So let's say hypothetically our agency was to sign Target as a client tomorrow, right? How would you suggest that people start to think through the lens of using Python to like help doing analysis or like just day-to-day SEO tasks on a site like that?
So the first thing to know is that ultimately you want to get data that you're working with into a database.
Okay.
So no matter how you do it, no matter what language you're working with, if you're working on a team, the way to work with data of that size is in a database. What you want to avoid, and this is the kind of dead end that I found a lot in working with Python just on my own machine, is that you end up working on your own machine. It's more difficult, and the developer tools are getting better all the time to do this, but it's really difficult to share the work that you're doing and the output of your work and make it repeatable with your team. Yeah, you can post a script to GitHub, but not, someone who doesn't know how to write Python or use it is not going to like pull that down and do it. So the key thing is get data into a database, whether that's BigQuery, whether that's Redshift, whatever analytics warehouse you want to use.
Just for the record, you recommend BigQuery?
We use BigQuery because it's within the Google stack and it makes it easier to integrate with Data Studio and Sheets and all the other Google tools we use. But functionally, there's no difference really at this point between...
Do you have to know Python to use BigQuery or a database?
No, so that's the thing, is like our goal first is to get data into a database that everyone can access and everyone can look at the data and you can report connecting it. There's a lot of stuff you can do. It opens up all doors when you get data into a database first.
Okay, so just so I'm clear. So again, we sign Target as a client tomorrow. Yeah. The first thing you'd want to do is get all of their data from their website, from analytics, from anywhere possible into a BigQuery-like database, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and the important thing to know is that the tooling for doing that, you could write Python scripts to push data to BigQuery, but the tooling for getting data into BigQuery without writing a line of Python has gotten so good that why not just rely on the relatively cheap tools that are out there to do this?
Gotcha. So you're saying you can basically skip learning Python to get to that stage, right?
Well, so there's one segment of work that Python can do, and that's taking data from an API, like Google Analytics, like Search Console, like anything like that, Deep Crawl, whatever it is, taking the data from that API and pushing it into a database.
Gotcha.
So that's called like just an ETL, extract, transform, load job.
Yep.
So that's one thing that you can do with Python. We don't really do that with Python anymore unless we're doing a custom integration for an API that just isn't covered by any of the tools out there.
Gotcha.
So for like Deep Crawl, for example, we wrote our own integration because there wasn't one that we could readily use. But the reason, the reason I say coding is for losers is not because coding is useless or it says anything negative about you if you write code. Code is very powerful. But if there's a cheap way to do the thing that you need to do without writing code,
Yeah.
then all day you should use the cheap thing that's out there.
Yeah.
Because who wants to maintain code if you don't have to?
Okay. So we've got the data into a database now. I mean, I still want to dig into and kind of uncover again, like this whole Python and SEO kind of correlation and relationship. Like, we got the data in a database. That's step one, correct? And then, like, where would Python fit into? Like, I guess, like, are there any use cases that you can think of? Like, you mentioned keyword tagging using Python. Like, how would I be able? Because I see it a lot, and some of the use cases that I've seen, if I'm being honest, no offense, y'all, they're a little bit weak, and I feel like they're not a good use of my time to go to, like, for me to learn Python to be able to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, there's a lot of things, like, if you want to just spin up a process and hack something together once, right, and learn, like, how can we do this? So if you want to we just keep using this, keyword intent tagging. If you want to kind of figure out a model to do that, it's great. It's really great to be able to write a quick Python script to do that. Just in the same way that it's great to be able to write a spreadsheet formula to do that. Just in the same way that it's great to be able to write a case statement in SQL or some type of regex in SQL to be able to do that. I guess that's what I'm getting at. So all of these methods are applicable in their own way. So, but if you don't, my kind of beef with, like, writing Python locally on your own machine and why we don't train any of our people to do that is because it's a data sharing cul-de-sac. That's my main issue. I think.
Meaning what?
Because it's on your local machine.
Okay.
You're working with CSV files.
Gotcha.
And it's often you end up just hacking along, and you're not necessarily 100% sure that the output you got is what you wanted or repeatable by someone else if they pick up the same script.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it's just not as transparent as we want, given the amount of people we have touching different data sets, right?
So I guess going back to those three examples that you used in terms of, like, so just for the record too, keyword intent tagging, meaning you've got a list of keywords that you get from SEMrush, Ahrefs, wherever you're getting your keyword data from, and then instead of manually going through and writing, like, top funnel, mid funnel, bottom funnel, or purchase intent, whatever,
informational, whatever it is.
Right. Instead of doing that manually, there's three ways that you could do that. You could use Python, right? You could use SQL, you said, right?
Yeah.
Or use some sort of regex script within Excel. So, like, why do you think that the industry is talking a lot about Python to do something like that, as opposed to just doing it within it because the data set is too big?
I think it's just that Sheets and Python and SQL to some extent are all doing the same things, right? They're all accessing the same compute in the same way, as whether you're doing, like, a loop through something to do that type of tagging. Whether you're using regex, right, to do, like, pattern matching, they're all using the same fundamental, for loops and regex. So at the level of compute, they're doing basically the same thing.
Okay,
that's important to know. But I think if you're at a point where you're maxing out on what a spreadsheet can handle, it is attractive to I'll just write a Python script. It can handle much larger data sets, right? Because it's just running in the background on your local machine. It's not running in, like, a Google Cloud server somewhere that has timeouts and basically.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because I've seen that example a couple of times now from a couple of people. This guy Hamlet Batista, I've seen, like, really kind of, like, does a tremendous job with Python and SEO and a lot of stuff. And I think I believe it was him who wrote an article on Search Engine. I think I sent it to you about, like, keyword tagging and intent tagging and stuff like that using Python. But for you, for example, like, again, so let's say Target. Let's say Target literally comes to you and, like, hey, David, like, we've seen your stuff on Coding is for Losers. We know, like, you've got a really awesome toolkit in terms of, like, knowing how to crunch and analyze data. We really want to go through this keyword intent mapping exercise with our website. Like, how would you tackle that? Would you use Python or would you?
So the first thing always is just get the data into a database.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So, like, first step,
So in that
the data goes to BigQuery.
In that case, the data would be like a full crawl to get all the URLs, and then the keywords from some sort of keyword.
Like Search Console, basically.
Okay, Search Console.
Or maybe SEMrush for like a secondary.
And would you use Python to get that data into it? Or I guess you just said that you wrote some custom Python scripts to get deep crawl data and Search Console.
Yeah, so we'd either use like a tool like Stitch to get, like analytics data in, or we'd use, again, like a Python script that we wrote. It's just more of an integration to the API to get data into BigQuery.
Gotcha.
But you could just as easily, without Python, export it. If you're just doing this once, export a CSV, upload it to Google Cloud Storage, and just do an import into BigQuery from Google Cloud Storage. Without knowing any Python, you can get data
and
into BigQuery.
You don't think that a site like Target would be too big for that?
No, because it just runs. It's just an upload job that runs in the background.
Okay, so we've got the data that we need from crawl, from whatever analytics into BigQuery. How would you then go about writing that script or whatever you want to call it to get those keywords tagged automatically without having to
so for those, we've written SQL models that do basically the same type of regex tagging as you would do in Python. I think the key difference, so we'd pretty much use SQL for any of this stuff. We found that it hasn't blown its top for any of this stuff that we've tried to do. The key difference, I think, between like using Python on the command line, like a local machine, and using this kind of like database and SQL approach that we prefer is, obviously we use Python, right? We're doing API integrations, is just individual contributor versus team. So like we work in a very, like team-centric way where a lot of different people are touching the data, and we need cohesiveness between what they're looking at. And we also have different skill sets. So not everyone knows SQL. Most of us don't know SQL, actually. And most of us are just going to be consumers of data and want to look and analyze the results and strategize, right?
Yeah, like me.
Like your type of stuff.
Yeah.
That works really well in a database, in like a BigQuery context, because you can access that same BigQuery database through a reporting tool and get what you need to get at without knowing how to write any of this code. Python is really, really great if you are an individual contributor, if you're doing your own work, if you're an SEO consultant, and you just want to, boost your skill set, and you don't have to share things out to a ton of different people. You know what I mean? Because then you can just, you can just use it on your own machine. You bring your work with you, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the difference between the.
So then, like, in what scenario? Again, because I've seen like a lot of Python SEO like becoming very hot, and I'm understanding more now why. But like, would you recommend that? Like me, let's say I'm an SEO. I either work at an agency, I own an agency, I work in a house. Like, when would you suggest that because it's difficult. Like, do you know Python?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, enough to be dangerous, but definitely like anytime we're writing a real script, we have actual team members doing it.
So would you suggest, like, when would you suggest that somebody learns Python versus contracts out or hire somebody who knows Python full time?
Yeah, I think it's an expectations thing. So like, obviously, learning to code is great. It won't hurt you to start to learn Python. You might really like it and you want to dive deeper and become a full-time developer, right? That's great. So I don't think it ever hurts to get your hands dirty and start learning it. There's tons of online courses that you can get up to speed. For me, it's an expectations thing. So if you expect to learn a little bit of Python and then, be a super proficient Python developer that can write any script and build apps and, do production grade development work. I think for the most part, in people that I've worked with who are going through that, including myself, right? I stopped short of that because I was like, I'm never going to get there. No matter, unless I focused on it 100% of my time and went to go work as a junior developer, I was never going to get to that like senior developer type of point where I'd be comfortable writing, big production grade stuff. So, and the fact is that there's enough really talented developers available and out there in the market and looking for work that for our team, it's much, much better to pay a professional to do the job and write the script and get it done, and you know that you can trust that they're writing production grade software.
Yeah.
Versus me try to hack it together, have it not work that well, and have it work one time but not be like a super scalable thing.
And then that's the only thing you're focused on at that time, right? So I mean, so I guess that then begs the question of like how much time do you need from a Python developer to, like, again, so like going back to the example of like if we had Target as a client tomorrow, they want us to do this keyword tagging thing. You don't write Python. You obviously know how to manage Python developers. Most people won't. But like how like would you need a full-time Python developer? Like would you need 10 hours, 20 hours, 100 hours?
Usually like you can, for any specific script task. So say you're in the case where you have a spreadsheet process that you like.
Yeah.
For keyword intent tagging. You sign Target, you bring them on, you realize quickly that the spreadsheet's not going to scale. To take your spreadsheet process and translate it into a script, well, first of all, what better place to start than having a working spreadsheet, right? Because a developer can just look at it, and that's basically their spec, right?
Yeah.
We do this XYZ processing, trace it through. Writing a script based off that, 10, 20, 30 hours. Within a week, you can have a working script that can do the same thing. Maybe even less, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the complexity of the process that you're running. Could take someone 5 hours. So it just the amount of time it takes start to finish in this world of you sign a client, you sign a client, then you do the work. You don't do the work before you sign the client.
Yeah.
So you only know the work that you need to do when it hits you in the face.
Right.
So in that world, learning things from scratch that people go to school for and spend thousands of hours learning just doesn't really work that well.
Yeah. On a level of difficulty to learn Python versus some of the other, like what coding languages
So,
like how does it compare?
Yeah,
to that?
so that's why I say that, is that you can learn SQL. For our team, we've just found SQL to be much more applicable. And if you know some like spreadsheet formulas, you can learn SQL. It's counting and averaging, and there's date processing and regex and all. There's a bunch of elements, but you can learn that if you're sitting next to someone who's good. You can learn that in a few days.
Okay. I guess so. Like again, so we're going back to this person who. We have Target, we know that we've identified that we need some sort of development, whether that's Python or SQL, right? I mean, like
why SQL versus you were asking me.
When would you suggest that you use SQL versus Python? And like,
I guess for training our team.
Yeah.
For me, it's just SQL all day, because we work in databases. That's what we use on our team, right? We use BigQuery as a data warehouse. We know that we'll have to use SQL. If you want to be doing any type of ad hoc analysis on that data, you need to know SQL. So for our team, it's kind of a requirement to work on the data analysis side. You have to learn query languages and SQL specifically.
Interesting. So that's interesting. So we have going back again, the Target example, but like we have the data in BigQuery. You would actually be using SQL to analyze that, not using Python to analyze that.
Yeah, and you could. So I guess once you have the data in the database, you could just as easily write a Python script that reads the data from the database and does some processing and writes back to it, right? So you could still do if you really love Python that much. Some people just like writing scripts, right? It's fun to do stuff like that. You could still just read the data from a BigQuery database and write to it. You can still do the same thing. Or you could do that in SQL.
Okay. So, I mean, it's also important to note that you've built a significant amount of tools that leverage all these coding languages in some form. SQL, Python, whatever the hell else.
Yeah, I mean, our data pipelining app, Query Our Recipes, is built in Python.
That's
right. So we have 2 Python developers on our team. So I'm not like anti-coding or anti-Python in any way. It's just we have a way that we leverage these stacks. So we keep I guess we have a separation of concerns. We build apps in Python, we write data analysis code in SQL. So we just separate out like what we use those languages for.
Yeah, and I think kind of like the important note that I really wanted to hit on throughout this conversation was the fact that like I see a lot of everyday, for lack of a better term, SEOs like myself seeing stuff online and thinking I need to learn Python, you know, like, but is that like at the same token though, like there's and this is just my mindset, I know you share the same mindset, that's why we're partners, but is that there's certain things that you want to invest your time in, and that oftentimes, hence the name Coding is for Losers too, is that there's an easier way to do things, right? Like Python is a tremendous language. It's a tremendous skill if you know it. It's very applicable to SEO right now. However, there could be an easier way to do things without having to learn a very complex coding language that also is going to take up your entire time. Like you're basically, if you learn Python, you're pretty much going to have to become a Python developer, correct? I mean, like you're not really going to have that much time to do other stuff. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just...
No, I mean, you could, well, I think one of the reasons why Python is picking up a lot of any programming language, right? Programming languages go through these cycles where they're hot or less hot, hot or cold. And Python's going through that with SEO right now because of the community, which is great. A lot of people are posting, you know, gists and examples of code they've written to do specific things, right? It's like the classic blog post of late 2019. It's like, I did this with Python for SEO. Yeah. Here's my code. You can repeat it.
I'm seeing a lot of those. Yeah.
So like that's why it's becoming more popular, is because there's more pieces coming out that people can pull down and build on. So I think that's the level of proficiency that you can hope to get to if you're just teaching yourself Python on the side. That's a good first goal, is like, can I copy someone's script and run it? Can I modify a few lines in it to do something different that I wanted to do versus how they did it? You know what I mean? So like, I think that's an okay level of, you know, that's a good goal for someone who's learning, is like, can I copy something, run it, maybe modify it a little bit? That's how most web developers learn too, right? Can I build this site slightly different than this other site?
No,
but,
for sure.
But for data analysis specifically, I always think about the stack first, like of your skill set. So if you're weak, first thing for our team that you need to have is be really good at Google Sheets. If you're not super fluent, super proficient in Google Sheets formulas and all of the nuances of Google Sheets, you're not going to be able to really work on our team. So that's kind of like our first step in the door, right? Right. Start there. And everyone has a different stack for their team and the way they work. For us, it's spreadsheets first. If you can't get good at those, you're not going to be able to learn SQL well. And I also think if you're not really solid at spreadsheets first, you're not going to be able to necessarily learn Python well.
And when you say spreadsheets, you don't mean like conditional formatting, you mean like VLOOKUPs?
Yeah, I mean formulas.
Okay.
So like the business logic of formulas is very similar. What it's running under the hood is really like a scripting language like JavaScript or Python.
Gotcha.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think first you start with sheets and get really good at sheets and master the formulas that you need to know. And then after that, like you can learn SQL. Okay. You can start playing around with Python, but it's important to have a strong foundation, because without the strong foundation, there's other shiny objects are going to come up. In 2020, 2021, it's not going to be Python. There's going to be some other JavaScript for SEO. It's going to be like the hot thing, and everyone will be doing like their own site crawls on their machines. Yeah. With, regex and stuff like. So
it's just so interesting how these things have been around for a while. Like Python's not new. You know what I'm saying?
No, but it's decades old.
Yeah, it's in the stuff that people are doing with it is not. It's cool. Like it's I think it's so interesting, and I think that people are. Well, I think a lot of people too get into SEO and then they realize like a lot of the money is actually in big technical SEO, and that one of the ways that you get clients and one of the ways that you kind of prove your worth is by having a skill set and being able to publish things like this. It's kind of like which is awesome. I think it's great for the community. But I guess again, like in our training platform, the Blueprint, I like to try and push people into things that are kind of like the Pareto's principle of SEO. Like to me, having somebody learn Python unless your agency's doing all, like, if your entire agency's portfolio of clients are like Target, then like, dude, you're probably gonna need somebody full time.
Yeah, well,
right?
you're gonna have full-time developers on your team.
Yeah, okay. But like, would you recommend that people learn Python? Like, if you're an SEO looking to level up their skills, looking to, you know, advance their career, grow your agency, like, when is Python?
I would say learn SQL first.
Okay.
Because SQL is always applicable. Like, if you're trying to work with large data sets, you can do pretty much everything you're going to need to do in SQL. I would say Python is like the cherry on top. You know, if you want to make yourself extra dangerous, and like we talked about earlier, in that like hacker needed situation, like emergency break glass, we're late on this client project, you know, this 10 million page site, and we are just completely clustered and we can't do it. Who can hack this together? You know, it's like, yeah, you love having someone on your team who's just like, I got this, goes into the command line, writes a script, does some, you know, kind of like hacking with the data, and like comes out with the output. Yeah. Right? You love having that person. So like from a career perspective, the more you can do, the farther you'll go. But it's important to build on a foundation and do it in an order so that you don't half learn SQL, half learn Google Sheets, half learn Python. You actually know nothing in that case. You worse than know nothing. You're dangerous enough to say that you can do all those things. But when it comes down to it, and when it is an emergency situation that you need to do some type of big analysis, those are all just going to fall like a house of cards. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So you really need to, whatever you choose to do, you need to choose to be very solid in it. Now, with Python, if you're not a full-time Python developer, it's nice because you can say, well, I know a little Python. I'll try. But no one's going to expect you, if you're just taught yourself Python for a couple of weeks, to be able to like do something super complex. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you get a full-time developer for that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, all right, man. This has been super informative. I think this has been a topic that I've been kind of like pinging you about a lot, and I'm glad we got to sit down and finally talk about it, because again, like, I think these types of things are awesome for SEO. It's awesome for the community, but I do like to make sure that people are getting advice from somebody who uses it on a daily basis like yourself, and manages people who use it on a daily basis, and don't just rush into something, because SEO is full of trends, it's full of ups and downs. And I hate to see people invest a lot of time, energy, and resource into something that you said, like, next year it might be JavaScript for SEO, and you know, Python's no longer that hot issue. Although, with that being said, knowing that skill is still something that's incredibly valuable, that you know, you can do a ton of things with it as well. I'm not saying don't learn Python.
Yeah,
by any means.
It's a great skill, but for our team, the way that we train people is foundational first. So Sheets, then SQL, and then if you want to get into scripting, you know, have at it. I guess the thing that we just want to be wary of, and we're always wary of with like what we promote or what we have our team do, is like avoid the shiny objects.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no harm in giving it space. You don't have to learn everything. There isn't time to learn everything. So like, make sure you have the fundamentals down. Yeah,
and that kind of, just to wrap it up, is that like I also think that self-awareness is important when it comes to this type of stuff. Like, I understand the impact and value of something like Python, but me personally, like, I would never push myself down that path. I would partner with someone like yourself who knows it, or I would contract someone who knows it and can handle it, just because, you know, again, it depends on where you are with your career, what you want to do with SEO, you know, where you want to take your business. And like, I think having a level of self-awareness in terms of like what you do and what you're good at, kind of like you said with me, like, I'm more on the analysis strategy side, like, and it's just much easier for me to partner with somebody who can handle these things.
Well, yeah, and you have leverage out of your time now. Yeah, like,
exactly.
If you want to spend 3 hours studying something, like, you can pick and choose. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff within just your space of work that you do that you'd want to read about.
Yeah. So I guess point is that Python is important. It's impactful. It can definitely be used for SEO, especially when it comes to...
we build apps with it, so it's not like for talent.
Yeah, one of our companies runs on it, literally. So, and especially when it comes to big tech enterprise SEO, it's definitely something incredibly valuable. It's definitely something that will help you sell contracts too, I think, if you have that capability in-house, or you have the ability to at least talk about it. But I think understanding, again, where you are with where you want to go with your career in this space.
Career-wise, yeah.
And, you know, where you want to take your business. It can get very messy, I guess, in a sense, if you're just, again, reading headlines and being like, oh shit, like, Python's the new thing, I need to learn it, I need this capability.
I guess the core takeaway is like, if you're halfway through learning something else, don't ditch it for Python because you see it in headlines.
Word.
Finish learning what you're learning and then like maybe move on later.
Word.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. If you like this video, as always, leave David some comments. He's going to be in and out of the comments as we go through this stuff. And we're going to be recording a lot more stuff while you're here in Miami.
Yeah.
So we'll see you guys on the next one.
All right, thanks.